The night was glittering with lights, laughter, and the sound of music echoing from one of Istanbul's most glamorous industry events. Celebrities were everywhere, cameras flashing like fireworks, but for Demet Özdemir, the noise of the night was nothing compared to what she was about to hear. She had walked into that room prepared to play her role, smile for the press, pose for photos, shake hands with producers. She told herself that she had moved on, that she had buried the past. But deep down, her heart still carried a silence too heavy for words. And then it happened. She felt it before she heard it, a presence behind her, so familiar that her body recognized it before her eyes could confirm. A warmth, a pull, like gravity itself shifting. She froze. And then, like a whisper carried through the storm, she heard it. Demet, her name. Spoken so softly, yet it cut through the crowd, through the music, through the armor she had built around herself. It wasn't just a name. It was a memory, a confession, a wound reopening and healing all at once. In that instant, time stopped. Her breathing faltered. Her eyes widened. Because she knew. She didn't need to turn, didn't need to see his face. The truth was already written in her trembling heart, he still loved her. The man behind that whisper was Can Yaman. The man whose life had collided with hers years ago on the set of her Kensi Kuss, Daydreamer. To the world, they had been characters in a romantic comedy. But to millions of fans, and to themselves, it had been something more. The chemistry between them was undeniable, raw, and far too real to be contained on a television screen. Rumors had followed them everywhere. Were they in love? Were they hiding something? And when the show ended, so did their public closeness. Or so everyone thought. But that night proved something else. The story was far from over. Demet remembers the chill that ran down her spine. When he whispered my name, it wasn't just a greeting. It was everything unsaid between us. It was regret. It was longing. It was love, still alive, after all this time. Her hand shook slightly as she turned. And there he was. Ken, taller, stronger, changed by time, but his eyes, the same eyes that once looked at her like she was the only person in the world, had not changed. They burned with a familiarity that made her heart ache. For a split second, everything else melted away. The chatter, the music, the flashes. All gone. There was only him. And in that moment, Demet realized something she had fought against for years: love doesn't vanish. It hides. It waits. And sometimes, all it takes is a whisper to bring it roaring back. The moment their eyes met, it was as if the world itself forgot to breathe. Demet stood frozen, her heart pounding louder than the music echoing from the ballroom behind her. She had promised herself she would stay strong, that if she ever saw him again she would act indifferent. But that promise shattered the instant she saw those eyes, the same eyes that once held her entire world. Ken didn't rush to speak. He just looked at her, as if searching for something familiar, as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked. And then, almost reluctantly, a faint smile touched his lips. It wasn't the charming smile that fans adored on red carpets or in magazine covers. This one was softer, almost fragile, filled with an emotion he couldn't mask. "Hi," he finally said, his voice low, careful. Demet's lips parted, her breath caught. For a second, she wanted to turn away, to protect herself from the storm she knew was coming. But she couldn't. Instead, she whispered back, "Hi." It was such a simple word, yet it carried years of silence, pain, and questions. Around them, people laughed, talked, moved from one conversation to another, but the two of them stood in their own quiet universe, suspended in time. He shifted closer, not too close, but enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence again. "Can we talk?" he asked softly, his voice almost pleading. "Somewhere away from all this." Demet hesitated. Her mind screamed to walk away, to not reopen the wounds she had spent so long healing. But her heart? Her heart was already answering. She nodded, and without another word, they drifted through the crowd, unnoticed, as if guided by something stronger than choice. The terrace was cooler, calmer. The hum of the city filled the air, distant traffic, the soft murmur of the Bosphorus. They stood there for a moment, silent, both searching for words that could bridge the gap of years. Finally, Can spoke, his voice heavier now. I should have called. I should never have let it end like that. Demet's throat tightened. She had replayed those very words in her head countless times, imagining him saying them. But hearing them now, out loud, was overwhelming. It wasn't just the call, Can, she whispered back. It was everything after. The silence. The distance. The way you left me with questions I couldn't answer alone. He closed his eyes briefly, as though the truth cut him. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought walking away would make it easier, for both of us. But it never did. Every day, every flight, every new script, you were still there. I couldn't escape you. Her eyes filled with tears she fought to hide. She wanted to be angry, to remind him of the pain, the nights of doubt, the whispers of regret. But instead, all she felt was the truth she had been denying. She still loved him. And that whisper of her name had ripped away every wall she had built. She took a shaky breath. You hurt me, Can. More than you'll ever know. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time in years, she saw it, the guilt, the sorrow, the love that had never left. I know, he said quietly. And I've regretted it every single day. The night air grew heavier around them, charged with emotions too big to contain. And as they stood there, two souls broken and yet still bound, Demet realized this was not the end of their story. This was the beginning of something they could no longer run from. The silence between them lingered, heavy but not empty. It was the kind of silence that carried every unsent message, every unshed tear, every night they had spent apart wondering what could have been. For Demet, standing on that terrace beside him felt like stepping into a memory that had never truly faded. The city lights stretched below them, but all she could see was him. Do you know what hurt the most? She finally asked, her voice steady but trembling at the edges. It wasn't that you walked away. It was that you acted as if what we had meant nothing. Like it was just part of the job. Like it was only acting. Can's eyes widened, his jaw tightening as if he had been waiting years to defend himself against those very words. It was never just acting, Demet. You know that. His voice cracked, just slightly, but enough for her to hear the truth bleeding through. Every smile, every look, every moment we had on and off that set, it was real to me. Too real. That's why I panicked. That's why I thought running was safer than staying. She swallowed hard, remembering nights on set when she had caught him watching her even when the cameras weren't rolling, when she had felt his hand linger on hers just a little too long. Those were not scripted moments, they were confessions without words. And yet, he had left. Safer for who? She asked, her eyes sharp with both pain and longing. Because it wasn't safer for me. I was left to pick up the pieces while you became unreachable. You disappeared into work, into new cities, new faces. And I was the one who had to answer questions I didn't even know how to ask. Can took a step closer, his expression raw. I thought distance would protect you from the chaos around me. From the media, the pressure, the expectations. But I see now that all I did was protect myself and abandon you. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. His words pierced through her, because they were the very words she had prayed to hear but feared would never come. Her heart pounded with a dangerous rhythm, torn between relief and anger. You don't get to erase the years with one apology, she whispered, her voice firm but trembling. You don't get to come back and make me forget everything I went through without you. I'm not asking you to forget, he said quickly, his tone desperate now. I'm asking you to believe that I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Even when I stayed silent, even when I made every wrong choice, I loved you. Her breath caught. The words hung in the cold night air, undeniable, irreversible. She had always wondered if he felt the same, if his silence was indifference or if it was pain. Now she knew. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. And what am I supposed to do with that, Can? What do we do with a love that survived everything but us? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, not to touch her, not yet, but to close the space that had kept them apart for so long. His hand hovered, trembling slightly, as if asking permission. "You tell me if there's still a chance," he said softly. "Because if there is, even the smallest one, I will fight for it. I will fight for us." Demet's heart clenched. In that moment, every wall she had built around her heart began to crumble. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to step into his arms and forget the pain. But love, she knew, was never that simple. And so she stood there, staring into the eyes of the man who had once broken her and who still, somehow, held the power to heal her. The only question left was, would she let him? The city around them pulsed with life, but for Demet and Can, time had shrunk to a single fragile moment. His words still echoed in her chest, "I never stopped loving you." They were the words she had wanted to hear for so long, yet now that they were spoken, they felt both healing and terrifying. She turned away for a second, gripping the balcony rail, trying to steady herself. The cool metal pressed against her palms, grounding her in the present. Her mind replayed everything, the late nights on set, the laughter they shared, the quiet glances that meant more than dialogue, and the silence that followed when he walked away. Every memory was both a blessing and a wound. "Do you realize what you're saying?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Do you realize how many nights I cried thinking you had forgotten me? That you had moved on without a second thought?" Ken stepped closer, his voice urgent but gentle. "I know, and I hate myself for it. I was a coward, Demet. I thought protecting myself was the same as protecting you. I thought silence was easier than the truth. But every day without you proved me wrong." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she refused to look weak. "And now you think you can come back, say a few words, and everything will just be fixed?" "No," he admitted quickly, shaking his head. "I don't expect forgiveness tonight. I don't expect miracles. All I want is the chance to show you that I've changed. That I would never, ever let you feel that alone again." The rawness in his voice cut through her defenses. He wasn't playing a role, wasn't delivering lines for the cameras. This was Ken, the man behind the fame, the man who once made her feel like the safest place in the world. She finally turned to face him, her tears shining under the terrace lights. "When you whispered my name tonight, everything came back. The love, the pain, all of it. And I realized something, Can. I never stopped loving you either. I just tried to bury it, because it hurt too much to carry." His breath caught, his eyes softening with both relief and sorrow. "Then let me carry it with you this time." For a long moment, they just stood there, neither moving, neither speaking, letting the truth settle between them. Then, slowly, Demet allowed herself to step forward. His hand, still hovering in hesitation, finally found hers. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if no time had passed at all. It wasn't the dramatic reunion fans might imagine, no kiss under the stars, no sweeping declarations. It was quieter, more fragile, but infinitely more real. A hand held after years apart. A silent promise that maybe, just maybe, love had survived the storm. Demet's voice trembled as she whispered, "This doesn't erase the past. But maybe it gives us a chance to write a new chapter." Can's eyes locked on hers, steady, unshaken. "That's all I've ever wanted." And there, under the night sky of Istanbul, they stood together once again, not as co-stars, not as public figures, but as two people who had finally stopped running from the truth. Because sometimes, love doesn't end. Sometimes, it waits in silence, hidden in regret, and all it needs is a whisper to return.